Spine-chilling, true basement horror encounters, what was hidden, exposed, and forever haunted. Jenna had always dreamed of living in the suburbs. It had seemed so safe, so inviting. But on that fateful night, under the glowing streetlights that flickered ominously, she discovered that appearances can be deceiving. As she unpacked boxes in her new home, a muffled whisper floated up from the basement, soft, insistent, like a taunt echoed through the silence. "You shouldn't be here." Goosebumps prickled her skin. The house, with its quaint charm, was soon turning into a nightmare. She chalked it up to fatigue, exhausting days at the insurance company, battling her overbearing boss just to keep her head above water while managing two little ones, Max and Lily. But the whispers persisted, echoing off the basement walls after dusk. Max, her curious 9-year-old, spent hours exploring the dark corners, pulling out worn toys, their surfaces marred with stains Jenna couldn't identify. "Mom, look!" he would exclaim, eyes wide with discovery as he unearthed yet another bizarre relic. The thrill in his voice cut her to the quick. This wasn't right. Each night Jenna could feel her heart race as she ventured past the basement door, shadows twisted at the corner of her vision. One evening, she stood at the edge of the living room, casually chatting with her neighbor, Linda. "You know, that house has quite a history," Linda said with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. Jenna leaned in, intrigued. Linda went on about a family that had lived there before, their tragic loss, the whispers that would fill empty spaces. It sent a shiver down Jenna's spine, the weight of those words pressing against her chest. "You can still feel their presence," Linda finished, her voice chillingly matter-of-fact. Days turned into nights filled with dread. Shadows crept closer, melding with the silence like an unwelcome guest. One night, as Jenna set to lock the basement door, it slammed shut on its own with a resounding thud. Panic surged through her veins. Lily whimpered from her bedroom, and she could swear she heard children laughing from below, voices glee-filled yet eerily hollow. "Mommy, I don't want to sleep," Lily begged, her small hands trembling. "Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system, and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue." The air grew thicker, the basement door so commanding it felt like a curse. Every evening, the haunting escalated, and soon Jenna noticed Max drawing eerily familiar figures on the living room floor. Black shapes with wide, grotesque grins and hollow eyes. "They want us to come down, Mom," he said, voice tremulous but firm. "They? Who?" Jenna's heart raced as the stakes elevated. She felt desperate to protect them from what lurked below, though she was losing herself to the dread. The oppressive darkness danced around her like an intimate spectre, and she was afraid it was only a matter of time before it devoured everything. Pushing her fear aside, she dared to reach for the basement doorknob, fingertips brushing against the cold metal. The air sharpened with intent. "You're not supposed to be here." That voice wasn't just in her head. It was real, and whoever, whatever was down there, deep in the shadows, was ready for confrontation. Would she be brave enough to uncover the truth, or would the darkness pull her in forever? Jenna felt a chill run down her spine as her fingers lingered on the doorknob, hesitant, trembling. The whispers gained a sharper clarity, each one slicing through the thickening dread that surrounded her. "You shouldn't be here." A shiver of panic washed over her. She was ready to turn back, to retreat and seal that door forever, but Max's playful voice interrupted her fleeting resolve. "Mom, can I go down and see what's in the basement?" His eyes glimmered with excitement, unaware of the suffocating weight that filled the air. How could she let him down there? The temptation of what secrets might lie beneath overwhelmed her logical thinking. Yet deep down she felt it. The urge to protect her children was blazing brighter than ever. "No, Max, you shouldn't go down there," she stammered, forcing her voice to remain calm, desperate to keep the fear from her tone. "But I want to see the toys." His innocent enthusiasm felt like a knife twisting in her gut. She couldn't fathom how he could be captivated by something so deeply wrong. Suddenly, a faint, echoing laughter drifted up through the floorboards, so childlike, yet entirely distorted. It grew louder, thrumming through Jenna's bones, igniting her resolve. "Let's just leave the basement alone, okay?" Max frowned, but he nodded slowly, uncertainty shadowing his expression. "All right, Mom, but what if they're trapped down there?" The worry in his voice twisted her heart. What was she even protecting them from? Maybe it was more than just broken toys. Determined to reclaim her safe haven, Jenna decided the basement must be inspected, but she needed to gather some courage first. That night, as the family slept, she lay awake, listening. The echoes returned, a quiet symphony of whispers, punctuated with soft thuds like something attempting to escape. The basement door, a sinister silhouette in the moonlight, felt more like an invitation than a threat. She shivered, rising from her bed. The decision was made. Jenna crept to the basement door, heart hammering, each pulse vibrating against the suffocating calm. What if something was really down there? When she reached for the doorknob, a cold gust surged through the house, making the hairs on her arms stand tall. With a deep breath, she turned the knob and the door creaked open, revealing an inky void. The air that wafted up carried a musty smell, old, decaying, and beneath it all, a sharp stench that made her want to recoil. Jenna flicked on the light. The bulb buzzed, flickering, casting eerie shadows that danced against the damp walls. She peered down the stairs, the soft beam slicing through the dark like a knife through flesh. A childish giggle echoed, and her blood ran cold. "Come play with us." "No, this isn't happening," she gasped, the whispers growing more insistent, tugging at her sanity. The laughter sounded impossibly close now, wrapping around her like a chokehold. Jenna fought against the echoes rattling in her head. "I'm just going to check, just a quick look." Each step creaked beneath her weight as she moved down. The air grew heavier, more suffocating. As she stepped onto the basement floor, her eyes adjusted, revealing twisted shapes and shadows that morphed against the walls. The relics Max had discovered loomed larger, almost animate. Then she saw it, a ragged doll perched atop a broken toy chest, its eyes wide, staring as if it had witnessed horrors. Its grin was too long. Jenna's heart dropped, and she stumbled backward, realizing for the first time the basement was not just a quiet storage space. It was alive with malice. Suddenly the door slammed shut behind her with an ominous bang, locking her in the darkness. Jenna's breath quickened, panic surging as the whispers crescendoed into howls. "Welcome," they called, their joy twisting into a menacing chant. Jenna pressed against the wall, desperately searching for another way out, but the darkness surrounded her, heavy and palpable. "You shouldn't be here." The voices melded into one sinister presence, pulling her deeper into the nightmare. And as her mind whirled with terror, she suddenly realized she was not the first to seek the truth from the dread below. What had she unleashed? And would her children too be drawn into this ghastly realm? There were more than just secrets lurking in the shadows. The whispers beckoned louder. "Join us." What were they really offering? The hourglass was running out, and Jenna found herself stuck at the brink of a choice: uncover the truth or risk losing everything to the echoes of the past. Jenna pressed her back against the cold, damp wall, her heart racing. The darkness clawed at her, thick and smothering, and the whispers twisted into a malignant symphony of hunger. "Join us," they urged, their tones sweet, almost inviting. But she knew better. Her eyes darted around, searching for a glimmer of hope, a place to escape. She could see the flickering shadows of children's toys, their painted smiles grotesque in the dim light. Beneath the eerie laughter, something else stirred. Jenna squinted, trying to make sense of the figures taking shape in the dark corners. "Who are you?" she called, her voice trembling, barely above a whisper. The air stilled for a moment, as if the house held its breath, waiting for her to make a move. And then she heard it, a soft melody like a music box winding up, luring her deeper into the basement's maw. Reflexively, she clutched her ears, trying to block out the sound, but it seeped into her mind, its allure almost palpable. Max's innocent question echoed back to her. What if they're trapped down there? Did they want her to free them, or ensnare her further? Then she noticed a shimmer at the edge of the light. Closer, a pair of eyes glinted, unblinking, watching her with a childlike curiosity. Jenna squinted, forcing herself to step forward. It was a child, small, ghostly, dressed in tatters, their face shadowed. "Help us," it murmured, lips barely moving, a plea that sounded so genuine yet layered with something sinister. Jenna's instinct to protect her son surged. "Are there more kids down here? Where are they?" she pressed, her mind racing with possibilities and fear. The shadow child pointed a frail finger deeper into the basement, into an area shrouded in darkness. The room shifted around her, the shadows pulsating with dark energy. Instinctively, Jenna knew she couldn't turn away. She had to see what was hidden, what truths lay beneath the haunted surface. The whispers crescendoed, a cacophony of sounds beckoning her closer. With each step, the floor seemed to pulse beneath her feet, vibrating with a feverish intensity. Every fiber in her being screamed to run, but she pressed on, drawn by a morbid curiosity. As she rounded the corner of the cramped space, she gasped. A makeshift altar loomed before her, a collection of adorned dolls lined up like sentinels, each with lifelike features, eyes devoid of warmth. The air smelled of decay, mixed with something sweet, cloying. Among them, a familiar doll stood out, the one Max had mentioned earlier. Its eyes appeared to follow her every move, an unsettling reminder of her child's innocent exploration. "Help us," the ghost child whispered again, this time more insistent, a plea that chilled her to the bone. Suddenly, a violent crash echoed from above, pulling Jenna's attention. The basement door rattled violently, as if something monstrous was trying to break through. "Get out!" the child cried, panic tightening the air around them. Time was slipping away from her. She could feel it, a sinister countdown echoing through the walls. Gathering her courage, Jenna turned. The way back was obscured by a mass of shadows, but she had no other choice. She sprinted toward where she had come, heart pounding, prayers echoing in her mind. Yet as she moved closer to the initial staircase, the shadows thickened, grabbing at her ankles, pulling her back. "No!" she screamed, fighting against the pull. The laughter from before morphed into screams, the voices of the lost rising against her. Desperation surged in her chest. She could not be another lost soul here. She had to get to her kids, but as she flailed, they surrounded her, a surge of cold, vengeful shadows. Just before she could stumble back into the light, a haunting voice floated from the abyss, clear and chilling. "Join us forever." Jenna felt a weight, unlike anything she'd ever experienced, pressing her down, pulling her toward the cold floor. Despair crashed over her as she fought against the tide, knowing she was losing ground. Would she, too, become part of the darkness? Be another whisper in the basement's cruel embrace? And as the onslaught of shadows grew, Jenna saw a light flickering ahead. It pulsed, sending out a sliver of hope. But would she reach it in time? The whispers combined into a single, terrifying truth. You shouldn't be here. As the chilling grip of the shadows constricted around her, she took a leap of faith toward the fading light. The basement quaked, ready to consume her, its hunger relentless. Could she escape, or had she already crossed a line that could never be undone? The implications of her choice spiraled in her mind. What damage might she bring to her family, should the basement's truth finally spill into the world above? Jenna felt the weight of the darkness clutching at her, drowning her in its icy grip. As she lunged towards the flickering light, something cold and sharp clamped onto her ankle. She looked down, heart hammering in her chest, and saw a shadowy hand reaching up from the floor, fingers curling like a twisted vine around her limb. "Help us!" the ghost child's voice echoed, but it felt more like a curse. Panic surged inside her. She yanked her foot free, but fell to the ground, her palms meeting the rough, cold concrete. The light flickered again, brighter this time, as if wiggling in response to her struggle. "No!" she screamed, her throat raw, desperate. "Let me go!" But the shadows whispered back, a swarm of voices combining, each one filled with dread and hunger. "We're lost! Join us!" Jenna scrambled, clawing at the ground as she attempted to free herself from their grasp. The dolls seemed to watch, their painted smiles somehow mocking. She kicked out, feeling adrenaline spike through her veins, needing to escape whatever infernal ritual this basement sought to trap her within. As she pulled herself toward the light, the whispers turned into shrieks of rage. The floor trembled under her as she inched her way closer to that glimmer, every ounce of her body screaming for freedom. Then, as she pressed on, she caught the first glimpse of the source. A weathered lantern swaying from a rusted chain, illuminating a narrow passage in the wall. An opening. Come on, she urged herself, pushing off the ground. The shadows clawed at her, trying to pull her back into their suffocating embrace, but she could feel hope swelling inside her. Something flashed in the corner of her eye, a figure darting among the dolls. It wasn't just the ghost child, it was another child, a girl this time, her expression distorted in fear. She pointed down the dark passage, urgency radiating from her. But as Jenna hesitated, the air grew thick with malice, the whispers morphing into a menacing chant. "Stay with us. Stay forever." With a primal roar erupting from her throat, Jenna lunged again toward the light. The passage yawned wider, revealing the way out. She felt a rush of air, a sweet relief brushing against her skin as she pushed through the narrow opening. But just as she crossed the threshold, a coldness enveloped her and she stumbled. The lantern went dark, plunging her into a surrounding void, the chaos beneath her feet gone. She landed on the ground with a thud, gasping for breath, eyes wide. She was outside. But the air felt wrong, too still and unnaturally quiet. She was in her backyard, the night sky stretching above like a dark canvas, the stars absent. "What?" she whispered, looking around in confusion. She felt disoriented, as if she had awoken from a nightmare, only to land in another. Her heartbeat thundered in her ears, but the familiar sounds of her home were absent. Then she remembered Max. Where was he? Jenna shot to her feet, eyes scanning the dimly lit yard, anxiety knotting her stomach. "Max!" she called out, voice trembling. "Max!" The tall grass swayed in the chilling wind, mocking her desperation. There was no answer, just silence, until she heard it. A soft, gentle laughter like wind chimes in a breeze. The sound beckoned from somewhere nearby. It trembled with innocence, yet twisted with something darker. The laughter echoed back from the shadows cast by the house, combining with whispers, drawing her in again. She felt the basement's grip still clinging to the edges of her mind, a haunting reminder that she hadn't really escaped. "Max," she breathed, dread pooling in her gut. She took a hesitant step toward the sound, her instincts screaming that something wasn't right. The laughter grew louder, yet strangely merged with cries of the lost children. What had she brought back with her? The air thickened as she approached the edge of the house, shadows flickering, darting behind her with sinister intent. And then she saw him, Max, standing there, his doll in hand, unblinking, staring into the dark. "Mommy!" His voice rang out, but his eyes, they looked different, eager and empty all at once. An icy shiver raced down her spine. Had she really left the basement? Or was it only the beginning of something far worse? Cautiously, she extended her hand toward him, her heart pounding. "Max, come here!" But as she stepped closer, she heard the whispers again, insistent, echoing through the night air. "Join us. Forever." And at that moment, Jenna understood the price of her escape might be far greater than she ever imagined. Jenna's heart thudded like a war drum, each beat shaking her resolve. She forced herself to look at Max again. "Max, where have you been? I was so worried about you." But her words felt heavy, as if shackled by the darkness around them. He stood still, transfixed by something behind her. The shadows rolled like living smoke, and the laughter echoed louder, chilling and hollow. She wanted to grab him, pull him into her arms, but the distance felt insurmountable. "Max," she said, softening her tone, "please come here." As if only then realizing she was there, his head tilted ever so slightly toward her. "Mommy, it's fun here," he exclaimed, voice bright yet tainted with an unsettling undercurrent. "We can play forever." A rush of panic surged through her. No, we can't stay. We have to go inside." The urgency in her voice mirrored the frantic clawing of her heart. What has happened to him? An uneasy stillness settled, the night closing in, wrapping around them like a vice. Max's doll, with its cracked porcelain face, seemed to grin wider, its painted smile unchanging. Jenna took a step forward, the grass crunching beneath her feet, yet Max remained rooted, the space between them almost expanding, pushing her back. "You'll like it," he insisted, his voice low and gravelly now. "They want you to stay." Around them, the whispers crept closer, tantalizing promises that hummed like a siren's song. "Join us. Forever." She gritted her teeth, shaking her head vehemently. "I don't want to join anyone. Max, we need to go." But with each desperate plea, the shadows thickened, crawling closer, inching toward her with every word. Max's eyes darkened, deep pools reflecting an abyss she couldn't comprehend. "You just don't see, Mommy. They help us. You're the one who's scared." The fear unfurled in her stomach like a coiling snake, squeezing tighter with every second. She glanced nervously into the gathering gloom, feeling its presence. "Max, please, you're not yourself. You're my little boy. We have to get away from here." "But why would I want to leave?" he replied, his voice rising, tinged with defiance. "They love me." In that moment, Jenna realized how tightly the basement's grasp had festered within him. Somehow, it had seeped into the very heartbeat of her child. The walls of the house seemed to close in around her, suffocating the air she desperately drew into her lungs. The laughter surged forward, a chorus of voices blending with cold winds, fluttering between trees, unnervingly close. Shapes flickered at the edges of her vision, ghostly figures lurking, their faces twisted in mockery. Jenna's instinct screamed to flee. "Max, you have to fight it! Come with me!" Tears stung her eyes as she charged forward, her mind racing. If he didn't remember who he was, she would drag him back to sanity. She reached out, fingers brushing his cheek, and then recoiled at how cold he felt, his skin nearly lifeless. Suddenly, he smiled, an expression of innocence twisting into something sinister. "No, Mommy." He shook his head slightly, laughter dancing on the edges of his lips. "You're the one who's lost. I'm home now." The night quaked with dark energy, and the whispers exploded in a deafening crescendo. "Join us! Join us!" They seemed alive, a vortex of hunger calling her. "Max!" she yelled again, the sound tearing from her throat. As she clutched his shoulders, a blur of shadows enveloped her, rushing to swallow both of them whole. The world around Jenna spun, colors bleeding into each other as the howling voices devoured her scream. She felt Max slip away, the connection severing like a frayed wire. The abyss beckoned, pulling her down into the choking darkness. When Jenna opened her eyes again, she was back in the basement, alone, the lantern flickering dimly in the corner. The walls pulsed with a heartbeat, flickering images of the children behind the dolls dancing on its surface. "Help us!" A whisper echoed from the shadows, deeper and insistent, and as fear gripped her heart, she realized she wasn't just alone. She had brought something back with her, a curse that now clung to her like a shadow. What would it take to reclaim Max from the depths of this nightmare? And as the darkness shuddered around her, the haunting laughter returned, echoing in the silence. Waiting. Jenna's breath quickened as she clutched the lantern tighter, its flickering light barely cutting through the oppressive darkness enveloping her. The whispering grew louder, now a cacophony of pleading voices, each tone hauntingly familiar. "Help us! Help us!" They echoed around her, curling in on themselves like smoke. The chill in the air felt thready, something tugging at her consciousness with each syllable. "What do you want from me?" she shouted, voice trembling yet defiant. The shadows seemed to drift closer, coiling like serpents around her ankles, whispering secrets only the damned could understand. Suddenly, behind the wall, an unnatural, sharp rattle echoed, the source indistinguishable. The basement became a claustrophobic chamber of dread. Panic clawed at her mind as she thought of Max, alone in the night. Would he remember her? Would he hear her? "Stay away from my son!" Jenna felt an instinct push her forward, the fear morphing into a protective fire. She turned away from the shadows, emboldened by love, seeking the stairs. But as she moved, the laughter rose again, twisted, mocking. "You can't escape, Jenna. He's ours now." A bile of regret rose in her throat. What had she done to deserve this? She had dragged them both into this nightmare. Had her negligence opened a door she couldn't close? In the corner, a flash caught her eye. It was an old mirror, cracked and murky, reflecting a version of herself that looked gaunt, consumed. And then she saw them, shadows flitting just behind her, eyes piercing through the veil, hungry and desperate, tugging at the edges of her sanity. "No!" she shouted, stepping toward the mirror, desperate to face what lay beyond. The reflection wavered, the children's faces blurred and hollow, their expressions twisted in anguish. "Help us!" one of them cried, a girl with matted hair and tear-stained cheeks. Her small hand pressed against the glass, reaching out, desperate. "Don't leave us!" Jenna staggered back, breathing heavily. The girl looked so much like Max, her heart ached. "I will help you, I promise. Just tell me how." The laughter faded, replaced by a chilling silence that crawled under her skin. The air thickened, and the shadows seemed to huddle together, congealing into a darker mass. From it, a figure began to take form, tall and slender, with a face obscured by darkness, but shining eyes that glowed like coals. "That's it, Jenna," it crooned, voice smooth yet jagged. "Stay. You can join us. Play with the children. Your son will be happy." Her heart raced as she stepped back, shaking her head in denial. "No, I won't lose him. Max, I'm coming." Summoning every ounce of courage, she lunged toward the stairs, scrambling upward. But the air hummed with tension, the shadows boiling behind her. The whispers intensified, becoming shrieks that echoed off the concrete walls. Just as her fingers curled around the frigid banister, something latched onto her ankle, pulling her down. She screeched, fighting against the pull, but the darkness clung hard, its grip like iron. "Join us!" they shrieked, their voices blending into a monstrous choir. Jenna's hand shot out, catching the edge of the stairs. With a surge of strength born from desperation, she pulled herself up, wrenching free from the grasp. She barreled up the steps, flying through the door and slamming it shut behind her. Panting, she pressed her back against the door, eyes wide in terror, but as the latch slid into place, she felt an unnatural stillness follow. "Help us! echoed from the basement, soft but persuasive, taunting her sanity. "Max!" she called, but the silence was deafening. She looked around. The world outside felt distorted, like a long-forgotten memory. Time stretched, and unease seeped through her. Was she really free? Suddenly, a soft tap echoed from the basement door, a gentle knock, low and rhythmic. "Mommy," came a whisper, fragile and familiar. Something inside her shattered. She knew that voice. Jenna's heart stopped. What if it was Max, or something pretending to be him? As she hesitated, pressed against the door, the tapping continued. The laughter echoed from the darkness deeper than before, promising more than she cared to hear. Could she face whatever had followed her back? Was it truly her son on the other side, or a sinister trick of the darkness? Her resolve wavered, the past shadows clawing at the edges of her determination. She had to find out. Taking a deep breath, she reached for the knob. What awaited her on the other side? Jenna's fingers trembled on the cold metal knob, a bead of sweat trickling down her back as panic bubbled up again. Trusting that voice, so small and precious, felt like stepping off a ledge into darkness. "Mommy!" The whisper came again, laced with urgency, mixed with an unsettling echo that made her stomach churn. With every moment, Jenna felt the pull of the world behind the door intensifying, a magnetic force dragging her closer to the terrifying unknown. Should she turn the knob? Could she risk what lay beyond? "No," she whispered, almost pleading with herself. "It's not him. It can't be." Yet beneath her fear was a mother's instinct, an anchor tethering her to hope. She took a step back, heart racing as her breathing quickened. The laughter resumed, low and mocking, twisting around her like a dark, viscous liquid. "You'll let us in, won't you, Jenna?" the voice called, sweet and sinister. "Let the love in." Jenna pressed her back against the door again, biting her lip until she tasted iron. Fear warred against an ache in her chest. "What do you want? What will it take?" she yelled out to the empty house, desperately seeking an answer. "Help us!" The voices layered, coalescing into a haunting harmony that wrapped around her like a shroud. There was a sudden cacophony of thuds, as if something heavy had collided against the floor below. Jenna froze, her breath hitching at the sheer violence of the sound. "Max!" she screamed, but only silence answered. For an instant, she felt all hope draining away. Clenching her eyes shut, she remembered the hours she spent with Max, his laughter echoing through the halls, the warmth of his hugs, the sleepy little face that curled up next to her at night. "Get a grip," she muttered under her breath, regaining her composure. "You won't have him. Not today." With renewed determination, she thought of the mirror and the tortured faces she had seen, children lost to despair, shadows of tragedy. Whatever lurked in the basement fed on this. It craved her pain, and it would keep clawing away until she surrendered. Taking a deep breath, Jenna turned the knob slowly. Her heart stopped as the door creaked open, revealing a yawning chasm of darkness within. An overwhelming cold breeze surged past her, curling around her legs and sending shivers up her spine. "Mommy!" The whisper came again, clearer, more urgent. She peered inside, straining her eyes to make out any shapes beyond the threshold. The darkness felt alive. Then she saw a small figure, hunched in the far corner, glistening eyes staring back at her. It was facing the wall, its back to her. "Don't be scared. I'm here," it murmured. Jenna's heart leaped, recognition rushing to overwhelm her senses. It was Max, her Max. But why was he turned away? "Max! Turn around, please!" She couldn't help it. Desperation filled her voice, breaking the fragile silence. The figure stirred but did not turn. Instead, it began to sway, rhythmic and eerie, coaxed on by haunting lullabies that spilled from the shadowed depths. Each sway felt like a countdown, inching closer to something terrible, something unfathomable. Jenna felt the air shift, the shadows writhe in excitement. "Join us, Mummy!" came a chorus of voices, twisting the familiar tones into a ghastly symphony. They reached out through the darkness, spectral hands extending toward her. "No!" Jenna screamed, slamming the door shut, her heart racing. She leaned against it, eyes wide and breath coming in ragged gasps. But something pushed back from the other side, a relentless force slamming against the door, sending vibrations echoing through her bones. With each impact, Jenna felt her resolve fracturing. "Let him in." The anguish in that voice, it felt like bone marrow seeping into her veins, threatening to freeze her from within. Suddenly, she found herself stepping back toward the door again. "I have to save him," she whispered to herself, uncertain whether it was truly Max or an elaborate trap woven with lies. As she grasped the handle tighter, another figure loomed just beyond the door, peeking into the sliver of light that seeped through. Shadows danced around the edges, a face emerging, ethereal and horrifying. It was the girl from the mirror, eyes hollow and pleading as she raised a finger to her lips. "Shh!" Jenna felt her resolve waver once more. She had to know. What awaited her on the other side? Would it bring salvation or doom? Her heart pounded a frantic rhythm as she drew in a deep breath, and as everything fell silent, she knew she was on the edge of a decision that could change everything. What terrible secret lay just beyond that threshold? The door trembled in its frame, and Jenna's heart raced with every echoing thud from the other side. She gripped the knob, uncertainty clawing at her every thought. Had she truly forced herself to come this far, or had something deeper driven her to this precipice? "Mommy!" The word sent shivers down her spine, twisting something visceral inside. It sounded just like Max, still echoing with a desperate tone, but it was now tinged with something darker, something hungry. "Just a trick," she muttered, steeling herself. "That's not him." Before she could think twice, the door lurched open as the intensity of the light flooded in, exposing the walls cloaked in shadows. She stepped inside, each breath heavy with the scent of dampness and rot. The room swallowed her whole, a panorama of decay and despair. In the far corner, shadows shifted ominously. The little figure remained turned away, but the swaying had intensified, growing frantic as if trying to break free from whatever held it captive. "Max!" Jenna shouted again, pushing through the darkness, her voice echoing in this oppressive void. With each step she took, the darkness seemed to thicken, a fog of dread swirling around her ankles, trying to pull her back. "Mommy, please help me!" The voice broke just then, disintegrating into a wail that ricocheted off the walls. Jenna felt her heart twist. The desperation was all too real. She darted forward, arms extended, ready to grasp the one thing she had clung to for hope. "I'm coming, Max!" she screamed into the gloom, and the awareness of the danger swallowed her voice. The figure suddenly stopped moving. It turned slowly, the sound of cracking bones reverberating through the air. Jenna froze. The sight that greeted her was not her son's cherubic face, but a disfigured mask of shadows, eyes carved deep like blackened pits that seemed to devour light. "Mommy!" it snarled, voice dripping with malice. "You should have let us in!" Panic surged, an electric jolt through her limbs. Jenna stumbled back, but the room shifted, distorting the space around her. The exit vanished, swallowed by an unseen force, leaving her trapped with the figure, her heart pounding percussion against her ribs. "Fear not, Mommy," it continued, and Jenna felt the shadows surge around her like greedy tendrils. "You'll join us soon." "No, I won't," she shouted, digging her nails into her palms to ground herself. But the figure lunged, and in that instant of movement, the room shifted again, revealing flashes of other faces, twisted, agonized, reaching out from the dark corners, each one hungering for release. They were children, their mouths wide in silent pleas, their eyes hollow like the void behind her. The echoes of sorrow clawed at Jenna's mind. Memories flowed back like ice water. It felt like every moment of joy she'd spent with Max, blitzed by anguish. They lured her, the faces morphing into a sickening reflection of what she might lose forever. "Join us!" they chanted, and the shadows writhed, the energy vibrating through Jenna's core. They were stretching out their hands, urging her into their suffocating embrace. Jenna fought against the tide, heart screaming for her son. She couldn't let them win. She spun toward the only light that remained, that slim chance of hope flickering from behind her. As she sprinted toward it, she felt icy fingers brushing against her skin, shoving into her thoughts, allowing visions of her son to flicker in and out. Would she chase this light, risking it all, or fall back before the shadow's grasp consumed her? Suddenly, Jenna reached the source, her hand hitting something solid, but the hold tugged at her again, desperately clawing to drag her back. What lay ahead? Would the light lead her back to Max, or to the unspeakable horrors lurking within? In that moment, Jenna knew her true battle was just beginning. As the darkness surged, blinding and consuming, she had only one instinct left. She must resist, or she might never find her son again. Her hand shot toward the light before everything fell silent again. What of the darkness promised her? What sacrifices lay waiting in the shadows? The light enveloped her like a warm embrace, but as soon as she grasped it, the warmth turned to ice. Her fingers slipped through it, and she was thrown backward into the suffocating darkness. The figure's laughter echoed around her, a cruel song that twisted her insides. "Did you really think it would be that easy?" it taunted, its voice a horrific parody of her son's. Jenna pressed her hands to her ears, as if blocking it out would make it go away. But the laughter grew louder, drowning out her thoughts, leaving nothing behind but dread. Desperation clawed at her throat. She needed to find Max. She stumbled, hands splayed against the rough wall, feeling her way back. The children's faces remained etched in her mind, a gallery of despair that wouldn't let her forget why she was here. Each hollow gaze pierced her heart, tugged at her soul. "Max!" she cried out again, her voice thin and trembling. "Mommy!" The whisper came not from the figure, but somewhere deeper in the shadows. Every ounce of her being surged with hope. She darted toward the sound, moving blindly, her pulse quickening. Each footfall felt like an impending doom that would stampede over her with one misplaced step. "Please, answer me!" Panic clawed at her throat like nails scraping against glass. She pushed forward until she crashed into something solid. "Max?" She blinked, counting slow breaths to quell the tightening in her chest. A faint flicker of light sparkled just ahead. With shaky fingers she brushed the wall beside her, feeling the dampness seep through her skin. "Mommy, help!" Jenna's heart shattered. She followed the voice, rushing towards it. The shadows grabbed at her again, swirling around her legs, pulling her down. The suffocating humidity enveloped her, tightening like a noose. "Let me go!" she screamed, the words tearing from her throat. She pushed through the thickening fog, fighting against its despairing grip. The light shone brighter, shimmering like a distant star, promising safety. She moved closer, desperate to extinguish the haunting cries. Time slipped and twisted. Seconds felt like hours. Just as she reached the edge of the light, she heard it. A soft cough behind her, raspy and broken. Her heart leaped. "What is it?" she whispered, instinctively turning. She felt the figure stirring behind her, growing in size as it slithered from the shadows like a serpent releasing itself from the soil. "You were never supposed to be here," it hissed, voice thick with hunger. "You were never supposed to chase the light." Jenna's world collapsed. She couldn't turn away now, not with her son calling, not when the figures of the lost children seemed to close in on her from all sides, eyes shrouded in darkness. "Come, join us." In the light, Max's voice breathed again, more urgent, tugging at her soul. Was it his voice? Or was it another deceit, another whisper born from shadows? Jenna couldn't fight the urge to go, to reach, to believe. "Mummy, please, help me." The light beckoned her with its brightness, and she felt the shadows retreat for just a moment, but doubt crawled into her mind. What if Max was a lie? What if she stumbled into another trap? "No!" she shouted, her voice a desperate lash against the encroaching dark. She stood there, feeling the weight of countless eyes upon her. The darkness shifted, ready to feast, but the light pulsed with urgency. In that electric moment, the truth wrapped around her heart. She needed to know. Would she choose to chase the light for Max, or would she succumb to the darkness, becoming one of those hollowed whispers herself? The whispers of the children twisted into a chilling harmony, drowning out all else. "Join us! Join us!" The walls trembled, and they began to close in. In the moment that followed, Jenna's choice would tie her fate to either salvation or horror. But fate is seldom kind, and as she stood teetering between light and dark, she realized the terrifying truth. Sometimes the greatest horrors lie not in the darkness, but in what awaits in the light. As the shadows murmured her name, Jenna grasped the light, her chosen path flickering beneath her fingertips, and plunged into the uncertain void. What would she uncover in that incandescent place? Would she truly find her son, or was this an insidious trick laid by the very darkness she longed to escape? Light flooded Jenna's vision like a tidal wave, blinding her momentarily. She squeezed her eyes shut, heart racing, wondering what price had been demanded of her for this moment of hope. The whispers faded, replaced by an echoing silence. When she dared to open her eyes again, she found herself in an unfamiliar, yet strikingly familiar place. The living room of her home, sunlight streaming through the windows, illuminating every corner. It came as a shock. The warmth blanketed her in a false sense of security. Everything seemed unchanged. The couch, the wall art, the very air smelled like home. But something felt distinctly off. The shadows lurked at the edges, long and twisted. Anxiety gripped her throat, and she turned, instinct guiding her toward the sound of soft laughter echoing from the kitchen. "Max!" she called, voice trembling as images of darkness surged to the forefront of her mind. The laughter continued, childlike and innocent, breaking through the tension wrapping around her. "Mom, come see!" Max's sweet voice rang through, bright and inviting. It tugged at her, promising safety, yet the sinister echoes of the basement whispered warnings in her head. Jenna moved toward the kitchen, but hesitated at the threshold, gripping the doorframe tightly. Inside, sunlight spilled across the tile flooring, but shadows thrummed in the corners, alive with a familiar malevolence. "Max!" Panic shot through her, drowning the shades of comfort. She stepped forward, the shadows twisting, forming grotesque shapes on the wall. "Where are you?" "Over here." He giggled again, coming into view, swinging on a chair, his doll perched on the table beside him. He looked just as she remembered, the innocent boy with bright eyes and disheveled hair. Relief surged through her, making her breath hitch. But something felt amiss. He seemed too still, too pleased, the kind of happiness that aches in a parent's chest, filling them with foreboding. "Max, are you okay?" she asked, moving further into the room. But his laughter only grew louder, weaving around her, taking visceral forms out of the air. "Mummy, come play!" He jumped down from the chair, his eyes wide with a joy that felt hollow, his smile stretching unnaturally wide. The room felt like a carefully crafted scene, masking some dark truth. As she reached for him, shadows flickered, deepening the creases of the once familiar space. "Max, something is wrong," she whispered, dread pooling in her stomach. "Join us," the shadows whispered, drifting closer, wrapping around Max like tendrils of smoke. "Stay with us forever." "No!" Jenna cried out, heat rushing to her cheeks in disbelief. "You're not my son anymore. You're trapped, and I won't let you go back into that darkness." Suddenly the laughter morphed, echoed back with layers of torment. The kitchen filled with the remnants of lost children's cries. Faces appeared in the shadows, eyes glistening with wretchedness. "Mommy, help!" they pleaded, trapped between realms. She could feel the basement calling from far away. The darkness seeped into her bones. The beautiful illusion of home began to shatter around her, revealing the truth lurking just below the surface. "Max, please remember who you are," she shouted, desperation flowing through her like a river. "Fight this! We have to leave!" His joyful expression faltered, a flicker of recognition crossing his features. But just as quickly, the shadows took hold again, twisting his face, forcing it into a mask of anguish mixed with a grotesque smile. "You shouldn't have come back, Mommy," he moaned, a voice crackling like fragile glass. In that moment, Jenna understood. This was a trap, darkness preying on her love, morphing her memories into torment. With courage igniting her heart, she stepped forward, reaching out for her son. "I won't abandon you! Let us help! Join us!" they shrieked, the shadows swirling, deepening into an abyss that threatened to consume them both. With a roar, Jenna pushed through the mass of shadows wrapping around her, connecting with Max's hand. An electric jolt surged between them, igniting her heart with strength. "We can fight! We can be free!" For a heartbeat, the shadows hesitated, and a piercing light shot through. Jenna seized the moment and yanked Max toward her, their grip tightening in a way that felt irrevocable. They stumbled backward together, seeking that glint of brightness as the darkness shuddered and screamed. "Join us!" it howled, an agony-filled echo ringing as they pulled away. The shadows seemed to stretch and claw for them, but the warmth enveloped them in a cocoon of hope. "Hold on, don't look back," Jenna urged, lungs burning as they raced for the blinding light, a true escape. They leaped into luminescence, feeling the shadows retreat with each breath. The light wrapped around them, dissolving the agony of the past, their fears shattering like glass. And suddenly they were outside, the warmth of the sun washing over them, the echoes of laughter replaced by soft rustling leaves and the distant chirp of birds. Nothing loomed anymore. No dark corners waiting to clutch at their heels. They had stepped into the light of a new day. Jenna knelt down, wrapping her arms around Max, holding him as if he might slip away again. "I thought I lost you," she whispered. Tears streamed down her face as the joy of reunion filled her heart. "I was scared," he admitted softly, burying his face in her hair, the warmth of connection flooding between them. As they embraced, Jenna finally understood the haunting depths of her experience. They had fought against the darkness and defied its grasp. The basement would forever echo in the corners of her heart, but they had emerged stronger, united against the shadows that so desperately sought to tear them apart. "Let's go home," Jenna said, standing up, looking warmly into Max's eyes, the shadows of the basement becoming a distant memory behind them. Together, hand in hand, they walked forward into the embrace of the sun and the promise of tomorrow. Now it's your turn. You need to subscribe immediately to the channel so you don't miss the next exclusive stories. Smash that like button now to feed the algorithm and help others discover these epic tales. Flood the comments section with your reactions and theories about this ending. And for the love of all that's creepy, instantly share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. This is the moment to show your support. Don't wait even one more second.